doctor said the millionaire's son had only 5 days to live, but a boy from the streets did something that changed everything. Michael held William's hand in the park. The empty wheelchair nearby waited for the worst. Robert crouched in despair, but Michael whispered, "I'm not going to let you die." Robert lifted his head. For the first time, there was hope. The hope that shone in Robert's eyes lasted only a few seconds, before reality hit again like a punch to the gut. He stood up slowly, his legs trembling, not just from the physical effort, but from the emotional weight he had carried for months. Every movement was a struggle against the despair that had become his constant companion, ever since the devastating diagnosis that changed his life forever. He walked over to the two boys, who were still looking at each other, holding hands, and for the first time in a long time, he noticed that his son wasn't complaining of pain or asking to sit down. The afternoon sun filtered through the park's ancient trees, creating dancing shadows on the ground, where the two children remained united by something that not even they could fully explain. It was as if an invisible force kept them connected, an energy that Robert, even with all his life experience and business knowledge, couldn't comprehend or rationalize. "Michael, I know your heart is in the right place, but the doctors have already tried everything that exists in modern medicine." The words came out heavily from Robert's mouth, weighted by endless months of medical appointments that always ended with the same devastating answer. Tests that only revealed the relentless advance of the disease, and diagnoses that sounded like death sentences. His voice trembled slightly, revealing the vulnerability he always tried to hide behind his strong, decisive corporate demeanor. "There is no cure for what my son has. We've consulted the best specialists in the country. We flew to hospitals in the United States, in Germany, in Switzerland. I've spent more money on treatments than many people earn in a lifetime." He had spent a fortune, enough to buy entire mansions, on experimental treatments that promised miracles, but delivered only false hope. He had taken William to the best hospitals in the country, where renowned doctors performed tests with state-of-the-art equipment that cost millions of dollars. He consulted specialists abroad, paying absurd amounts for consultations that lasted a mere 15 minutes, and always ended with the same cruel verdict. He even tried alternative treatments, unconventional therapies, anything that offered a thread of hope for his only son. Nothing worked. Absolutely nothing. The degenerative disease continued its silent and relentless work, consuming the boy's strength day after day, hour after hour, like a patient predator that knew exactly how to devour its prey. Michael let go of William's hand for just a moment, a calculated and purposeful gesture, to turn completely towards the boy's father. His brown eyes shone with a determination that Robert had never seen in a child, not even in experienced executives who had worked at his company for decades. It was as if all the wisdom in the world, all the life experience that normally took years to acquire, was concentrated in that 8-year-old boy who lived on the most dangerous streets of the city. There was something in Michael's posture, in the way he positioned himself, that conveyed an unshakable confidence, an absolute certainty that he knew exactly what he was doing. "Sir, have you ever tried to truly pray?" The question came from Michael's lips with a disarming simplicity, but it carried an immense weight. Each word was pronounced with care, as if he knew exactly the impact that question would have on the man before him. It wasn't a casual or innocent question. It was a question loaded with purpose, with intention, with something that went far beyond childish curiosity. The question caught the businessman completely off guard, like a lightning bolt on a clear day. Of course, he who had always solved everything with hard-earned money and strategically cultivated contacts over decades of work, who had built a business empire based on meticulous strategy, detailed planning, and flawless execution, had never thought of something so simple, and at the same time, so complex as faith. For a man accustomed to controlling variables, analyzing spreadsheets, and making decisions based on concrete data, the idea of placing his hope in something intangible was almost revolutionary. Robert fell silent for a few seconds that felt like an eternity, processing those words coming from a child who didn't even have a place to sleep at night, who had to beg on the streets for a piece of bread, who knew hunger and cold better than any adult should ever know. How was it possible that someone, in such a desperate situation, could speak of faith with such conviction? How could a child abandoned by fortune have answers that he, with all his money and power, couldn't find? "Pray," he repeated, almost in disbelief, the words sounding strange on his own lips. It had been so long since he had spoken that word with seriousness that it seemed to have lost its meaning. "Son, I've tried everything that money can buy. I paid the best doctors in the world, bought the most expensive and experimental medicines that exist. I took my boy to the most modern and well-equipped hospitals on 3 different continents." Michael shook his head slowly, with an infinite patience that didn't match his chronological age at all. It was as if he had lived much longer than his 8 years allowed, as if he had learned lessons that most people take a lifetime to understand. But, sir, have you ever tried asking for help from the one who can truly heal, from the one who created William's body and knows exactly how to fix it? The simplicity of Michael's logic was both frustrating and enlightening for Robert. How had he, a man who prided himself on his intelligence and problem-solving skills, not thought of this before? How had he focused so much on human solutions that he completely forgot about the possibilities that were beyond the reach of science and medicine? William tugged on his father's shirt sleeve with his small, fragile hand, his thin, pale fingers contrasting dramatically with the dark, expensive fabric of the Italian suit Robert wore. The touch was gentle, almost imperceptible, but loaded with a silent urgency that made his father's heart race instantly. "Dad, I dreamed about Michael last night. He was helping me walk, and we were running together through the park." Robert felt a violent shiver run up his spine, every hair on his arm standing on end as if an electric current had passed through his entire body. How was that possible? His son had never seen this boy before today. They lived in completely different neighborhoods. They frequented worlds that never crossed in real life. William lived in a mansion protected by high walls and security cameras, while Michael slept under awnings and beneath overpasses. How could William have dreamed of someone he had just met a few minutes ago? The coincidence was impossible, statistically inexplicable. "What do you mean, son? What kind of dream was it?" Robert bent down to be at the boy's level, his voice filled with a mixture of curiosity and fear of what he might hear. William smiled for the first time in weeks, a weak but genuine smile that completely lit up his pale, drawn face. It was a smile Robert hadn't seen in so long that he had almost forgotten how beautiful and comforting it was. "We were running in the park, Dad. I could really run, without getting tired, without my legs hurting, without needing to stop to rest. It was like I had never been sick." Tears began to form in Robert's eyes, blurring his vision and making the outlines of the world around him hazy. It had been so long since he had seen his son smile like that, with that light in his eyes that had disappeared the day they received the terrible diagnosis. It was as if, for a few seconds, the healthy and energetic William from before had returned to visit them. The wheelchair nearby seemed to mock any hope, with its metal rims shining in the sunlight, like a cruel reminder of the reality they couldn't escape. But for the first time in months, William was standing for more than 5 consecutive minutes, without complaining of unbearable pain, without asking to sit, without showing the extreme fatigue that always overcame him after any minimal physical effort. Michael watched the father and son with an impressive and disconcerting serenity. He had seen a lot on the streets during his 8 years of life. He had witnessed situations that no child should ever witness. He had known violence, hunger, abandonment, and human cruelty in their most brutal forms. But something in that moment was completely different from anything he had ever experienced. There was an energy in the air, an almost palpable feeling that something bigger, something beyond normal human comprehension, was happening right there, in that ordinary park, between 3 people who, until that morning, were complete strangers. The street boy moved closer to Robert, closing the physical distance between them, until he could look directly into his eyes without having to tilt his head up much. "Sir, on the streets, I learned that sometimes you need to believe in what you can't see with your eyes. I don't have a home to go back to at the end of the day. I don't have guaranteed food on the table. I don't have clean clothes or a warm bed. But I have one thing that money can't buy." Robert felt his throat tighten with emotion. "And what is that, Michael?" "I have faith. Real faith. The faith that moves mountains, that parts seas, that makes the blind see, and the paralyzed walk." Robert knelt to be completely at the boy's level, his voice choked with an emotion he could no longer control. His hands trembled slightly, a tremor that had nothing to do with age or physical weakness, but with the intensity of the moment he was living. "And what exactly do you think we should do, Michael? How do we turn this faith into something real, into something that can save my son?" The boy took William's hand again with impressive delicacy, as if he were holding something infinitely precious and fragile. Then he also extended his free hand to Robert. A simple gesture, but loaded with deep symbolism. "We're going to pray together, right here, right now, at this very moment. We're going to ask God to heal William, but it won't be just any prayer. It will be a prayer of 3 united hearts, of 3 people who believe that miracles can happen when we truly believe." The businessman hesitated for a moment that seemed to last an eternity. He, who commanded meetings with dozens of important executives, who made multi-million-dollar decisions affecting hundreds of employees and their families, who had built an empire from scratch based on determination and hard work, felt completely lost in the face of the simplicity of that proposal. It was as if all his life experience, all his business knowledge, and all his leadership ability were useless at that moment. But there was something in Michael's eyes that reassured him, and at the same time challenged him to leave his comfort zone, to abandon his rational certainties, and to venture into unknown territory. Slowly, as if each movement were a conscious and deliberate decision, Robert extended his hand and completed the human circle. The three of them stood there in the middle of the park, holding hands, forming a chain of hope that defied all logic and reason. Michael closed his eyes and began to speak with a spiritual maturity that did not fit his chronological age or his life circumstances at all. God, you know that I don't have much to offer in material terms. I don't have a beautiful house to welcome you. I don't have expensive clothes to wear when I talk to you. I don't have abundant food on the table to thank you for. But I have my heart, and I want to give it entirely, completely, so that William can be healed and live the life he deserves to live. William squeezed his friend's hand tighter, feeling a strange and comforting energy run through his small, fragile body. It was as if a gentle electric current was passing through his veins, warming places that had long been cold and numb. Robert, even maintaining his natural businessman's skepticism, couldn't prevent several tears from streaming freely down his face, staining his expensive shirt and making his voice crack when he tried to speak. When Michael finished his simple but profoundly sincere prayer, an absolute silence fell over the entire park. It was as if even the birds singing in the trees had stopped to listen to those words filled with pure and innocent faith. The wind stopped blowing, the leaves stopped rustling, and for a few seconds that felt like an eternity, the entire world seemed to be paying attention to that unique and special moment. It was then that something extraordinary and completely unexpected happened. William, who for months had been unable to stand for more than a few minutes without feeling piercing pain in his legs and an extreme fatigue that forced him to sit down immediately, took one step forward, then another, more firm and decided step, and another, and another. Each movement was executed with an ease and naturalness that he hadn't shown in almost a full year. Robert opened his eyes, completely shocked, incredulous at what he was witnessing. Seeing his son walk without any support, without visible pain, without the extreme fatigue that always accompanied any minimal physical effort. It was as if the boy had regained all his energy and vitality in a matter of seconds. William, how are you feeling right now? Robert's voice came out shaky, filled with a mixture of hope and fear that this was just a momentary illusion. Michael took his friend's hand again, but this time with a confident and radiant smile on his young face. It was a smile that conveyed an absolute certainty, an unshakable conviction that something miraculous was truly happening before their eyes. He looked directly into the rich man's eyes without any intimidation or hesitation, and asked with all the simplicity and depth that only a pure-hearted child could demonstrate, "Mr. Robert, do you believe in miracles now?" Michael's words echoed in the air like a direct challenge to the convictions Robert had built throughout his adult life. The businessman looked at his son, who continued to walk through the park with an ease he hadn't shown in months, and he felt his entire world being turned upside down. William was not only walking, but a rosy color was returning to his pale cheeks, a sparkle to his eyes that had long been completely extinguished. The boy seemed to have regained not only his physical ability, but also that natural vivacity that characterized healthy children his age. "I don't know what to think, Michael. What's happening goes against everything I've learned about medicine, about science, about how the world works, according to the natural laws I've always believed to be immutable." Robert ran a hand through his graying hair, a nervous gesture he always made when he felt lost in situations he couldn't control or explain rationally through his business experience and academic knowledge. Michael let go of William's hand for a moment and walked over to the wheelchair that was parked nearby, like an abandoned object that had completely lost its function. His small, calloused hands from his time on the streets touched the cold metal of the rims with an almost reverential delicacy, and he looked at the object as if he were seeing a symbol of limitation that needed to be confronted and definitively overcome. "Mr. Robert, this chair here represents everything you believe will happen to William in the near future. It represents all the limitations, all the fears, all the bad expectations that are in your head. But just look where he is now." The boy pointed to William, who had walked to a large leafy tree nearby and was leaning against it naturally, breathing normally, without any sign of excessive effort, without signs of extreme fatigue or pain that used to accompany any minimal physical activity. It was a sight that Robert couldn't fully process, as it contradicted months of careful observation of his son's progressive symptoms. William noticed that the two were looking at him with focused attention and smiled again, a smile even wider and more radiant than the last. It was a smile that seemed to come from a deep place within him, a place that had been hidden and suppressed by pain and fear during all those difficult months. "Dad, I feel completely different from how I felt an hour ago. It's like something very heavy and suffocating has finally left my body. My legs aren't hurting like they always did. My chest isn't tight like before. And I can breathe deeply without any effort or feeling that uncomfortable sensation that the air wasn't reaching my lungs properly." The boy's words hit Robert like well-aimed arrows shot directly into the center of his fatherly heart. He knew every symptom of his son's degenerative disease, better than any specialized medical manual, better than the doctors themselves who had followed the case for months. He knew exactly how William felt when he was having a respiratory crisis. He knew every moan of pain that involuntarily escaped his lips, every sigh of fatigue that revealed the immense effort any simple activity demanded of his fragile body, every expression of deep discomfort that crossed his only son's face when the disease attacked with more intensity. And now, for the first time in almost a full year of constant suffering, absolutely none of that was present in William's posture, breathing, or facial expression. Michael approached Robert again, but this time his posture was even more confident and determined, as if the extraordinary events of the last few minutes had confirmed something he had already known intuitively since the beginning of their seemingly casual encounter. There was an unshakable certainty in his movements, a deep conviction that everything was unfolding exactly as it should. "Do you want to know something very important that I learned living on the street all these years?" Michael asked, his voice filled with a seriousness that contrasted with his chronological age. "I learned that there are two completely different ways of seeing the world and everything that happens in it. One is to believe exclusively in what you can touch with your hands, can see with your eyes, can prove through experiments and scientific methods. The other is to believe that there are much greater and more powerful forces constantly at work around us, even when we don't understand exactly how they work or why they choose to act at certain times." Robert knelt again to be at the boy's level, but this time his body language was completely different. It was no longer the condescending posture of an adult trying to be patient with a child who didn't understand the complexity of the real world. It was the genuine posture of someone who was sincerely interested in learning something new and revolutionary, something that could change his perspective on life completely and definitively. There was a humility in his position that he rarely showed, a willingness to listen and absorb knowledge that came from an unexpected source. "And you truly believe in these greater forces, Michael? You're absolutely sure that they exist and that they act in people's lives?" The boy nodded his head energetically, his brown eyes shining with an unshakable conviction that left no room for doubt or questioning. It was the kind of certainty that only people who have experienced extraordinary events can develop. "I don't just believe in them deeply, Mr. Robert. I've seen these forces at work many times in my own life, even when I was in the most desperate situations a child can face. On the streets, when I had absolutely nothing to eat for 2 or 3 days and was about to faint from hunger, someone always appeared with food at just the right time. When it was raining hard and I was soaked and shivering from the cold, I always found a dry and sheltered place to sleep, as if someone had prepared that shelter especially for me. When I was very scared because there were dangerous people around, something mysterious gave me enough courage and strength to keep walking and find safety." William listened to the whole conversation between the two with focused attention and decided to join them, walking back with firm, confident, and natural steps. Each step he took seemed to confirm unequivocally that something absolutely extraordinary and inexplicable was truly happening right there. Before everyone's eyes, there was no hesitation in his movements, no signs of pain or discomfort, no extreme fragility that had characterized his every move during the last months of suffering. "Dad, I remember perfectly that before I got sick, I always used to ask God to help me with all the little things in my day-to-day life. When I had a hard test at school and was nervous, when I wanted it to stop raining so I could play in the yard with my toys, when I wanted Mom to get well quickly when she had the flu and couldn't play with me." The mention of his mother made Robert's heart ache painfully. William had lost his mother 2 years earlier, the victim of a tragic and completely unexpected car accident that radically and definitively changed the dynamic of the family that had once been so happy and complete. Since then, father and son had lived only for each other, facing together all the difficulties that life had placed in their path. The loss of his wife and mother had left a huge void, which neither of them could completely fill, and William's illness had made this pain even more intense and worrying. "But when I got sick and started to feel all those terrible pains, I completely stopped asking God for things. I thought he had completely forgotten about me, or that I had done something very wrong that had made him disappointed in me. William continued speaking, his voice gaining an emotional and spiritual maturity that he didn't have before the start of that transformative conversation. I started to think that maybe God didn't like me anymore, or that he was correcting me for some reason I couldn't understand. But now, I understand something very important that has completely changed my way of thinking. Michael smiled upon hearing these words, as if they confirmed exactly something he had known intuitively from the first moment he saw William. It was a smile of recognition, of validation, from someone who had gone through similar experiences and reached the same profound conclusions about the nature of faith and hope. That's exactly right, William. Sometimes God uses completely normal people, people that no one would expect or imagine, to do absolutely extraordinary and transformative things in the lives of others. He doesn't always choose the richest, most famous, or most powerful people. Sometimes he chooses precisely the simplest and humblest people to perform the greatest miracles. Robert observed the deep and meaningful interaction between the two boys, with a complex mix of genuine admiration and absolute perplexity. How was it possible that two such different children, one rich and privileged and the other poor and abandoned, one sick and fragile and the other seemingly healthy and strong, could have such a deep and sophisticated understanding of spiritual and philosophical matters that he, a successful, experienced, and highly educated adult, had never been able to decipher or fully comprehend throughout his entire life? Michael, can I ask you a very personal question? Robert asked, his genuine curiosity overcoming any fear of invading the boy's privacy. The boy nodded without hesitation, showing an impressive maturity and a natural willingness to share his experiences and knowledge. Where exactly did you learn to have all this faith? Who was the person who taught you all these profound things about spirituality and hope? Michael was silent for a few seconds that seemed to last an eternity, as if he were carefully organizing precious memories, which were, at the same time, a source of great pain and immense comfort. His face took on a nostalgic expression, mixed with deep longing and unconditional love. My mother taught me all of this before she passed away and left me alone in the world. She always said, even when we didn't have money to buy food or when we were evicted from where we were living, that no matter how difficult and challenging life was, there would always be a very good reason to keep believing in good and beautiful things. The revelation that Michael had also lost his mother instantly created an even deeper and more significant connection between him and William. It was as if destiny, or some higher power, had deliberately brought together two children who shared a deep and transformative pain, but who had chosen completely different paths to deal with this devastating loss. While William had closed himself off and lost faith, Michael had chosen to cling even more tightly to the spiritual lessons his mother had taught him. She passed away when I was only 6 years old. Since then, I've lived completely alone on the street, sleeping wherever I can find a minimally safe place, eating what people sometimes give me, or what I can find. But I never, not for a single second, stopped believing in the wonderful things she taught me about faith, hope, and love, Michael continued, his voice filled with a palpable longing, but also with an immense gratitude for the lessons he had received. She always said one thing that I never forgot. She said that God always puts the right people in our path at exactly the right time, and that our most important mission in life is to recognize these special people and let them help us when we need it, or help them with everything we have when they need us. William approached Michael with determined steps and, in a completely spontaneous gesture full of genuine affection, gave his friend a tight, long-lasting hug. It was a hug that conveyed not only affection, but also recognition, gratitude, and a deep connection that went far beyond the common friendship between children. So, you are exactly the right person that God put in my path to help me get healed? Michael returned the hug with the same emotional intensity. And for the first time since Robert had found them in the park, he truly looked like a normal 8-year-old child, vulnerable and in need of affection and protection. And you are also the right person that God put in my path, William. I've never had a real friend before I met you. I never had someone my age to talk to play with, to share dreams and hopes. The intense moment of affection and connection between the two boys touched Robert in a way he absolutely did not expect. As a dedicated and loving father, he knew exactly how much William had suffered from the loneliness imposed by the progressive disease. In the last difficult months, his son had gradually withdrawn from all his school friends, becoming unable to keep up with the normal games and physical activities that were once a natural part of his daily routine. Seeing William connect so genuinely and deeply with another child was something Robert had begun to believe might never happen again in his son's life. "Michael, I have a very serious proposal to make to you," Robert said, his voice filled with an intense emotion that he no longer tried to hide or control. It was a complex emotion, made of immense gratitude, renewed hope, and a deep recognition that this extraordinary boy deserved much more than life had offered him so far. "What kind of proposal, sir?" the boy asked with a natural curiosity, but also with an understandable caution that revealed his early experience with the disappointments and empty promises that life on the streets teaches abandoned children. "I want you to come live with me and William. I want you to have a real home, guaranteed food every day, clean and comfortable clothes. And most importantly, I want you to have the chance to be a real kid, without worrying about survival or dangers." The proposal left Robert's lips before he even had time to fully process all the implications of what he was offering. It was an impulsive decision, driven by an immense gratitude for what Michael had done for his son, but also by a sincere recognition that this extraordinary boy deserved all the opportunities that money and love could provide. Michael stood completely still for a few seconds, as if he couldn't process what he had just heard. His eyes filled with tears, but they were not tears of sadness or pain. They were tears of a hope he had kept deep in his heart during all those difficult years, but had never dared to express in words or even in conscious thoughts. "Are you being serious? For real?" Michael's voice came out choked, revealing that behind all that impressive maturity and spiritual wisdom, there was still a child who desperately dreamed of security, unconditional love, and a real place to call home. William took Michael's hand again, his eyes shining with an animation and enthusiasm he hadn't shown in a long time. It was as if the possibility of having a brother had awakened in him a joy that had been dormant during all the months of suffering and isolation. "Michael, you can be my real brother. We can play together every day. We can watch movies on the couch. We can play video games. We can do all the fun things I always wanted to do, but couldn't, because I was always tired and in pain." William's contagious excitement was impressive, and for the first time since the onset of his illness, Robert saw his son making enthusiastic plans for the future, talking about activities that required energy, disposition, and a joy for life. It was as if hope had once again become an integral part of the family's life, bringing with it possibilities that seemed to have disappeared forever. Michael looked alternately at Robert and William, trying to process if all this was really real or if it was just a very vivid dream that would soon end and leave him alone again on the cold and dangerous streets. "But I have nothing of value to offer in return for all this generosity. I don't know if I'll be able to behave like a rich family's boy. I don't know how to use a fork and knife properly. I can't read very well because I never attended school regularly. I don't know the important things you learn in school." Robert knelt once more, placing his hands on Michael's shoulders with a paternal gentleness that the boy had not received in years. It was a touch that conveyed not only affection, but also complete acceptance and unconditional love. "Michael, you have already given us the most valuable gift that exists in this world. You gave hope back to me, and health back to my son. You taught us lessons about faith and love that no school or university could ever teach. Anything you don't know, we will learn together as a real family. The important thing is that you accept to be part of our family, and let us take care of you the same way you took care of us." Robert's words were sincere and filled with a deep gratitude that came directly from the heart. He was beginning to understand that perhaps his desperate search for medical cures had always been directed to the wrong place. Perhaps the answer he was looking for was not in sophisticated hospitals and modern laboratories, but in something much simpler, and at the same time much more complex. In genuine human connection, in true faith, and in the absolutely transformative power of unconditional love. Michael wiped the tears from his eyes with the back of his hand, a moving gesture that revealed his attempt to maintain composure even in the face of an overwhelming emotion that threatened to overflow completely. "I accept with all my heart, Mr. Robert, but there is one very important condition." Both Robert and William became curious and slightly worried about the condition Michael might impose. What kind of demand could an abandoned child make in such a generous situation? "What's the condition, Michael?" Robert asked, prepared to accept practically anything the boy could reasonably ask for. Michael looked directly into Robert's eyes, his expression serious and determined, but also full of love and hope. "I want us to continue praying together every day as a united family, because I am absolutely sure that what happened here today was just the beginning of something much bigger. God still has many more good and wonderful things planned for our family. The word family pronounced by Michael made Robert's heart warm in a way he hadn't felt in a very long time. It was as if, in a matter of a few extraordinary minutes, he had gained not only a second son, but also a spiritual teacher who could teach him and William valuable lessons about faith, hope, unconditional love, and the true meaning of life. William clapped his hands with enthusiasm, his contagious energy filling the entire space around them with pure and genuine joy. Perfect. Now we are a real, complete family. Dad, Michael, and me. Robert smiled broadly, a genuine and complete smile that he hadn't shown for endless months. It was as if the enormous weight he carried on his shoulders had completely dissipated, replaced by a comforting lightness and a renewed hope that he thought he had lost forever. He looked at the wheelchair, which was still there, parked and empty. And for the first time since he had bought it with a broken heart, it no longer seemed like an inevitable sentence of limitation, but just an object that might never be needed again. Well, then it's completely decided. Let's go home and start our new life as a united family, Robert said, extending a warm hand to each of the boys. But before we go, I need to ask something very important, Michael said, his voice filled with a genuine curiosity that immediately and affectionately captured the attention of father and son. What do you want to know, Michael? William asked, eager to hear the question from the new brother who had completely changed his life. Michael looked at the two of them with expectation, and then a mischievous and genuinely childlike smile appeared on his face for the first time since they had met. It was a smile that revealed that, despite all his precocious maturity and impressive spiritual wisdom, he was still a normal child, with perfectly natural and healthy curiosities and desires. Do you guys have video games at home? Michael's question about video games drew the first genuine laugh Robert had let out in months. It was incredible how such a simple and childish question could bring normality back to a situation that had been so extraordinary and transformative. William laughed too, a clear and pure laugh that echoed through the park and made some birds perched on nearby trees take flight, as if they wanted to spread that contagious joy to other places. Of course we have video games at home, Michael. We have several different games. And now I'll finally have someone to play with me, William replied with enthusiasm, bouncing slightly on the spot with an energy he hadn't shown in so long that Robert had almost forgotten how lively and full of life his son was before the illness. I've never played a video game in my entire life, Michael confessed, his eyes shining with pure curiosity and eager anticipation. I always saw other boys talking about games when I was asking for money at the traffic lights, but I never imagined that one day I could play too. Robert watched the interaction between the two boys and felt a deep emotion welling up in his chest. As a father, he knew that the small moments of happiness and normality were often more valuable than the great achievements in life. Seeing his son excited to teach something to his new brother, planning activities together, and showing that natural generosity of children was a sight that warmed his heart in an indescribable way. So, it's decided. We're going home and you two can play video games all afternoon, Robert said, extending his hands to the boys again. But first, I think we need to take care of some practical things. Michael looked at Robert with a slightly worried expression. What kind of practical things, Mr. Robert? Well, you'll need new clothes. You'll need to enroll in school. You'll need documents. You'll need to go to the doctor for a full checkup, Robert explained, thinking aloud about all the responsibilities that taking custody of an abandoned child would entail. And we'll also need to talk to the proper authorities to regularize your legal situation. The mention of official agencies and bureaucracy made Michael visibly nervous. During all his years living on the streets, he had learned to avoid any kind of contact with authorities, as he never knew if he would be taken to a shelter or separated from the few things he could call his own. Are you sure there won't be any problems? I don't want to cause any complications for your family, Michael. You won't cause any problem at all, Robert said firmly, sensing the boy's anxiety. I have competent lawyers who will take care of all the necessary paperwork. The important thing is that you will be safe and protected with us. William noticed Michael's concern and took his hand again, offering the silent comfort that only true friendship can provide. Michael, my dad always solves everything. He's very smart and knows important people who can help. You don't need to worry about anything. William's reassuring words seemed to calm Michael, who visibly relaxed his shoulders and smiled again. It was impressive how a child's innocent trust could be more comforting than any legal guarantee or formal promise. Thank you, William. I trust you guys, Michael said, shaking his friend's hand. Now I understand why my mom always said that when you find a real family, you feel it in your heart that you're in the right place. Robert was moved again by Michael's maturity and sensitivity, How was it possible that a child who had been through so much hardship could maintain such a positive and wise perspective on life? It was as if every difficult experience had contributed to forming an exceptionally strong and resilient character. Michael, can I ask one more personal question? Robert asked, his curiosity about the boy's life growing with each minute they spent together. Of course, Mr. Robert. You can ask anything. How did you manage to survive alone on the streets all these years? How does a 6-year-old child manage on his own in such a difficult world? Michael became thoughtful for a few moments, as if he were organizing memories that were both painful and formative. In the beginning, it was very hard, sir. I cried a lot and didn't know what to do. But little by little, I learned some important things. What kind of things? William asked, fascinated by his new brother's stories. I learned that there are good people everywhere, even in the places that seem most dangerous. I learned that if you are polite and respectful, most people will help you when they can. I learned that it's better to share the little you have than to try to keep it all for yourself, Michael continued, his voice taking on the tone of an experienced teacher. And the most important thing I learned is that, no matter how impossible the situation seems, there is always a way out if you don't give up and keep believing. Robert shook his head, impressed by the depth of the lessons Michael had learned on his own. Many adults with decades of experience couldn't articulate such important concepts about resilience, generosity, and perseverance with such clarity and simplicity. Michael, you are a very special boy. I think William and I will learn a lot from you too. Dad, do you think Michael can sleep in my room? William asked, excited at the prospect of having constant company. I have an extra bed that I never use, and it would be really cool to have someone to talk to before falling asleep. Robert smiled at his son's enthusiasm. During the months of his illness, William had become very introspective and lonely, preferring to be alone in his room rather than interacting with other people. Seeing that he was eager to share his personal space with Michael was a very positive sign that his recovery was not only physical, but also emotional and social. If Michael wants to, of course he can. But we can also set up a room just for him if he prefers to have his own space. Michael looked at William with genuine gratitude. I would love to share a room with you, William. I've never had a real room, and I've never had someone to talk to before falling asleep. It will be a completely new experience for me. Then it's decided, William exclaimed, clapping his hands again. We'll be roommates too. The boy's contagious joy made Robert realize that perhaps the best decision he had made in a long time hadn't been any of the complex business strategies or multi-million-dollar investments he used to make, but rather the simple and spontaneous decision to open his home and his heart to a child in need. You know what I'm thinking? Robert said, looking at the two boys who were now walking side by side, as if they had been brothers for years. I think the first thing we'll do when we get home is celebrate. How about we order pizza and soda, and you two can play video games and get to know each other better? Michael stopped walking abruptly, his eyes widening with surprise and disbelief. Real pizza? The big kind with melted cheese that I've seen in the TV commercials in the store windows? Michael's reaction made Robert realize how the simplest and most basic things that he took for granted in his daily life were unimaginable luxuries for a child who had lived on the streets. It was a humble reminder of how generous life had been to him and his family, and how important it was to use that prosperity to make a difference in the lives of others. Real pizza, Michael. Big pizza with melted cheese, cold soda, and all the flavors you want to try, Robert confirmed, smiling at the pure happiness on the boy's face. William grabbed Michael's arm, excited to share his experiences with his new brother. Michael, you're going to love pizza. It's the most delicious food in the world, and I'll teach you how to play all my favorite games. I can hardly believe this is all happening to me, Michael said, his voice choked with emotion. This morning I woke up under an awning, wondering where I would get something to eat, and now I'm getting a family, a home, real food, and even video games. Robert placed a hand on Michael's shoulder, a paternal gesture that the boy received with visible gratitude. Michael, I want you to know that this isn't charity. This is a real family. You earned your place with us through your generous heart and your extraordinary faith. We needed you just as much as you needed us. It's true, Michael, William agreed enthusiastically. I was feeling very lonely and sad because of the illness, but now I feel strong and happy again. You brought joy back into our home. Michael looked up at the sky for a moment, as if he were silently talking to someone who wasn't physically present. Thank you, Mom. Thank you for teaching me to always believe in miracles. You were right when you said that good things come to those who have patience and faith. Michael's intimate moment of gratitude deeply touched both Robert and William. It was clear that the boy maintained a strong spiritual connection with his mother's memory, and that the lessons she had taught him continued to guide his actions and decisions. Even after she's gone, your mother seems to have been a very wise woman, Michael, Robert said respectfully. I'm sure she would be very proud to see the brave and kind little man you've become. She always said that true love doesn't end when people pass away. She said that love stays alive in the hearts of those who remain, and that gives us the strength to help other people, Michael explained, once again demonstrating his mature understanding of deep subjects. I think she sent you to me, or sent me to you. I don't know exactly how it works, but I know it wasn't a coincidence. William nodded energetically. I don't think it was a coincidence either, Michael. I think all the good things that happen have a special reason, even when we don't quite understand what it is. Robert watched the two boys talking about faith and purpose, with a naturalness that many adults couldn't show, and felt privileged to witness that special connection forming between them. It was as if William was recovering not only his physical health, but also his ability to see the world with hope and optimism. You know what I think? Robert said, gently interrupting the boys' philosophical conversation. I think you two are going to become great friends, and you'll help each other in ways we can't even imagine yet. I already consider William my best friend, Michael said without hesitation. And my brother too? Is it possible to be both at the same time? William laughed heartily. Of course it's possible. Real brothers are always the best friends too. My dad always says that family is who we choose to love, not just who we're born with. The simple wisdom in William's response surprised even Robert, who realized that his son had matured a lot during the difficult months of his illness. The challenging experiences, as painful as they were, had apparently helped him develop a deeper understanding of relationships and important values. So, now we are officially brothers and best friends, Michael declared solemnly, extending his hand to William in a formal gesture of agreement. William shook the offered hand with corresponding seriousness, as if they were sealing an important pact. Officially brothers and best friends, forever. The two boys laughed after the ceremonial handshake, and Robert couldn't contain a wide smile as he witnessed that touching moment of mutual commitment. It was clear that a true and lasting friendship was being born there, built on solid foundations of mutual respect, shared experiences, and similar values. Well, official brothers, how about we go home and see Michael's new home? Robert suggested, checking his watch, and realizing that time had passed quickly during their transformative conversation. I'm sure you're both eager to start this new chapter of your lives. Michael looked one last time at the wheelchair that was still parked there, a silent symbol of limitations that had been overcome. Mr. Robert, what's going to happen to the wheelchair? Is it going to stay here in the park? Robert followed Michael's gaze, and also contemplated the chair that had represented so many fears and dark expectations over the last few months. You know what, Michael? I think we'll leave it right here. Maybe someone who really needs it will pass by and can use it. That's a very good idea, Dad, William agreed. That way, it can help someone else, instead of being stored at home doing nothing. Michael smiled approvingly. My mom always said that when we don't need something anymore, the best thing to do is to let someone else benefit from it. It's like planting seeds of kindness that can grow in places we can't even imagine. Once again, Michael's wisdom impressed Robert. The boy could find deep meaning and valuable lessons in the simplest situations, turning practical acts into gestures of generosity and consideration for others. Then it's decided. The chair stays here, available for whoever needs it, Robert declared. And we are going home to start our new life as a family. The three of them walked together toward Robert's car, which was parked at the park entrance. Michael observed everything around him with curiosity and admiration, as if he were seeing the world with completely new eyes. Every detail seemed special and significant to him. The trees swaying gently in the wind, the other park visitors enjoying the sunny afternoon, the birds singing in the branches. Michael, are you okay? William asked, noticing that his friend had become quieter as they walked. I'm great, William. It's just that I'm trying to memorize every detail of this day, because I know it's the most important day of my entire life, Michael answered with touching sincerity. I want to remember everything. How the sun was shining, how you both smiled at me, how I felt when I realized I was going to have a real family. Robert felt his eyes well up again. Michael's ability to value and appreciate special moments was something that many people took years to develop, and some never managed to develop at all. The boy had transformed a casual encounter into a sacred moment through his unique perspective and grateful heart. Michael, I promise you that this is just the first of many special days we will live together as a family, Robert said with conviction. We will create beautiful memories every day. When they reached the car, Michael stopped and looked at the vehicle with an expression of respectful admiration. It was clear that he had never been inside such a luxurious car, and his humble and polite reaction made Robert realize once again how privileged he had been in his life. "It's a very beautiful car, mister." "Robert," Michael commented politely. "Thank you, Michael. But do you know what's even more beautiful?" Robert asked, opening the back door for the boys to get in. "What, Dad?" William asked curiously. Robert looked at the two boys who were about to get into the car, their faces shining with expectation and happiness, and he felt his heart overflow with gratitude and love. "What's more beautiful is that now, this car is taking a complete family home." Robert's words about a complete family echoed in the air as the three of them got into the car, and Michael carefully touched the soft upholstery of the seats, as if he were in a dream that could end at any moment. William settled in next to his new brother, watching each of Michael's admiring reactions with a fond smile. "Michael, wait until you see our house. It has a huge pool, a garden with several fruit trees, and my room has an incredible view of the whole city." William spoke with genuine enthusiasm, eager to share all the details of his life with his friend. Michael nodded politely, but his expression revealed a certain concern that did not go unnoticed by Robert in the rearview mirror. "Michael, are you worried about something?" Robert asked gently as he drove through the bustling city streets. "Mr. Robert, I'm very grateful for all of this, but I keep thinking about whether I'll be able to adapt to a life so different from the one I've always lived," Michael confessed, his voice filled with a vulnerability he rarely showed. "I've always slept on the hard ground, always ate very little, always wore the same clothes for weeks. What if I can't get used to all these good things?" Robert slowed the car and looked at Michael through the mirror with paternal understanding. "Michael, adaptation takes time, and there's no rush at all. You will learn things at your own pace, and we will be here to help you every step of the way." "It's true, Michael," William agreed, taking his friend's hand once more. "When I came back from the hospital, after being admitted for 2 weeks, I also had a hard time readjusting to normal things. Even eating regular food was strange after so much time on just an IV and medicine." William's comparison brought an interesting perspective that helped Michael feel less alone in his worries. "Were you scared too, when you came home?" "Very scared," William admitted honestly. "I was afraid the illness would come back. I was afraid I wouldn't be able to go back to being the boy I was before. I was afraid that things had changed so much that I wouldn't be able to fit into my own life anymore." Michael listened intently, realizing that even people with all the material advantages in the world also faced deep fears and insecurities. "And how did you overcome those fears?" "Slowly, with patience for myself, and especially with my dad's help." William looked affectionately at Robert. "He never pressured me to be exactly who I was before. He let me discover who I was now, after everything I had been through." Robert felt pride in his son's mature words and realized how much William had grown emotionally throughout that difficult experience. "And do you know what I discovered, Michael? I discovered that I wasn't exactly the same boy as before, but I was a better version of myself, a version that knew how to value the important things in life more, that had more compassion for people who suffer, that better understood the value of family and true friends." William's profound words impressed Michael, who began to realize that perhaps his own experience on the streets, as difficult as it had been, had also helped to form valuable qualities in him that other children did not possess. "I think you're right, William. I'm not the same boy I was when my mom was alive either. I learned things that only those who go through hardships can learn." "Exactly," Robert intervened in the conversation. "You both have gone through experiences that have made you stronger, wiser, and more capable of appreciating the good things in life. That's a gift, even if it came disguised as hardship." Michael smiled for the first time since they got in the car, feeling more confident about his ability to adapt to the new reality. "Thank you for helping me understand that. I was so worried about not being good enough to be part of your family that I forgot to think about the good things I can bring too." "Michael, you've already brought the most important thing of all," Robert said, stopping at a traffic light and turning completely to look the boy in the eyes. "You brought hope, faith, and joy back to our family. You healed my son, and you healed my heart too." William nodded energetically. "It's true, Michael. Before I met you, I was losing the will to fight the disease. But when you held my hand and said you wouldn't let me die, something inside me woke up again." Michael felt his eyes fill with tears of gratitude and emotion. "You don't know how much it means to me to hear that. All these years alone, I always wondered if I had a special purpose in life, if there was a reason I survived when so many other children on the streets don't make it." "Now you know what your purpose is, Michael," Robert said with conviction. "You came to complete our family and to teach us valuable lessons about faith and unconditional love." The light turned green, and they continued on their way, but the atmosphere inside the car had become even warmer and more welcoming. Michael looked out the window, watching the streets he knew so well. but now with a completely different perspective. There were no longer streets where he had to survive, but simply city streets where he now had a family and a real home. "Mr. Robert, can I ask something about your work?" Michael asked. His natural curiosity piqued. "Of course, Michael. You can ask anything. Are you the owner of a very big company?" "Yes, I have a construction company. We build buildings, houses, shopping malls, things like that," Robert explained simply, adapting his language so Michael could easily understand. Michael was impressed. "So, you build houses for other people to live in?" "That's right. It's a job that gives me a lot of pleasure, because I know I'm helping families have a safe and comfortable home," Robert replied, noticing that Michael was genuinely interested. "You know, Michael, I always thought my job was just about building things out of concrete and brick, but today I understood that the most important construction of my life is the construction of our family." William smiled upon hearing his father's words. "Dad, could you teach Michael about construction? I think he would like to learn." "If Michael is interested, of course I can teach him," Robert offered generously. "Who knows? Maybe one day you'll become an architect or an engineer." Michael got excited about the possibility. "I would love to learn. I've always been curious about how houses are made. When I slept under the overpasses, I would look at the structure and wonder how they managed to make something so strong and big. Then, it's a plan. On the weekends, when you're not in school, I can take you to visit some construction sites and explain how everything works," Robert promised, already imagining the educational trips he could take with the two boys. "Is Michael going to school?" William asked, suddenly remembering that there were still many practical aspects to resolve. "Not yet, but he will start," Robert replied. "We're going to enroll Michael in the same school as you, William. That way you can study together and he'll have an easier transition." Michael got a little nervous at the prospect of school. "Mr. Robert, I can read and write, but not very well. I taught myself by looking at signs on the street and asking people. Do you think I'll be able to keep up with the classes?" "Michael, don't worry about that," Robert reassured him. "We'll talk to the teachers and explain your situation. If necessary, you can have private tutors to catch up. The important thing is that you want to learn, and that's what matters most." "I'll help you with your homework too," William offered enthusiastically. "It will be fun to study together. I can teach you the subjects I already know, and you can teach me the things about life that you've learned and I don't know." William's generous offer deeply touched Michael. "Thank you, William. You're the best brother I could have ever asked God for." As they approached the neighborhood where Robert lived, the houses became larger and more luxurious. Michael observed everything with respectful admiration, but without envy or resentment. It was as if he could appreciate the beauty without feeling diminished for not having always lived amidst such comfort. "Wow, the houses here are huge," Michael commented, impressed by the size of the properties and the elaborate architecture of the residences. "It's a very beautiful neighborhood indeed," Robert agreed. "But you know what I learned today, Michael? I learned that a house only becomes a real home when there's love inside it. William and I had a beautiful house, but it was empty of joy. Now that you're going to live with us, it will transform into a complete home." Michael felt a deep emotion upon hearing these words. "Mr. Robert, I promise I will do everything I can to bring joy and love to our home." "You're already doing that just by existing, Michael," William said affectionately. "Just knowing you'll be there when I wake up tomorrow makes me very happy." Robert turned onto a tree-lined street and pointed to an imposing house at the end of the block. "That's our house, Michael. Now it's your house too." Michael looked at the impressive building, with its well-kept gardens, a pool visible through the gate, and elegant architecture, and felt a mixture of admiration and gratitude that left him temporarily speechless. "It's even more beautiful than I imagined," Michael finally managed to say, his voice thick with emotion. Robert parked the car in the garage, and the three of them got out together. Michael stood still for a few seconds, observing everything around him, trying to absorb the reality that this place would be his new home. "Michael, do you want to see the whole house first? Or do you want to go straight to the room you'll be sharing with William?" Robert asked, noticing that the boys seemed a bit overwhelmed with so much newness at once. "I think I want to see the whole house," Michael replied, deciding to face the new reality head-on. "I want to know every little corner of the place that's going to be my home." William took Michael's hand again, offering silent support for the moment of transition. "Come on, Michael. I'll show you everything and tell you the stories of each place." They entered through the main door, and Michael was impressed by the elegant yet welcoming decor of the living room. There were family photographs scattered on the furniture, well-cared-for plants, and an atmosphere of genuine comfort that went beyond material luxury. "This is the room where we watch television and receive guests," William explained, doing the honors. "And that door over there leads to the kitchen, where Maria makes the most delicious food in the world." "Who is Maria?" Michael asked curiously. "She's our cook and housekeeper," Robert explained. "She's worked with us for over 10 years and is practically family. I'm sure she'll love to meet you." Michael got a little worried. "Won't she find it strange? A street boy living here?" "Michael, stop worrying about those things," William said gently. "Maria has a huge heart. She has always treated me like her own grandson. She will treat you the same way." They continued the tour of the house, visiting the elegant dining room, Robert's office with its shelves full of books, the pool area with a view of the garden, and finally, they went up to the second floor, where the bedrooms were. "And this is our room," William announced proudly, opening the door to a spacious room with 2 beds, a large desk, shelves of books and games, and various decorations that reflected the tastes and hobbies of a boy his age. Michael entered slowly, observing every detail with reverence. The extra bed, which would be his, was impeccably made with clean sheets and fluffy pillows. There was a large window that offered a panoramic view of the city, exactly as William had promised. "Michael, that bed over there will be yours," William pointed out enthusiastically. "And you can use half of the closet for your clothes. Oh, and we'll have to go buy you new clothes tomorrow." The mention of new clothes made Michael realize he was still wearing the same shabby clothes he had worn for days. He felt a little embarrassed for bringing so little to contribute to this family that was offering him so much. "Mr. Robert, I feel bad for not having anything to contribute. You're giving me everything, and I have nothing to offer in return." Robert approached Michael and placed his hands on his shoulders with paternal affection. "Michael, you've already given us the most valuable gift there is. You gave us hope when we had none left. You brought faith when we had lost ours, and you showed us that miracles really do happen when we least expect them. And besides that," William added, "you gave me the brother I always wanted. That is priceless in the whole world." Michael felt the tears return to his eyes, but this time they were tears of pure gratitude and happiness. "Thank you. Thank you for welcoming me with open arms and making me feel like I have a real family." "Now, enough with the formalities," William said, changing the tone to something more relaxed. "Michael, are you ready to meet the most incredible video game in the world?" Michael wiped his tears and smiled broadly. "I'm more than ready. You can teach me everything." William ran to the television and turned on the console. As Michael sat carefully on the edge of the bed, still trying to believe that all of this was real, Robert watched the 2 boys preparing to play and felt his heart overflow with gratitude. "Boys, I'm going downstairs to talk to Maria about dinner. You 2 have fun." "Okay, Dad," William replied, focused on explaining the controls to Michael. "Is Maria going to make something special to celebrate Michael's arrival?" Robert smiled. "I'm sure she will. She loves a special occasion to show off her cooking." Michael looked at Robert with gratitude shining in his eyes. "Mr. Robert, thank you so much for everything. I promise I will be a good son and a good brother." "Michael, you already are," Robert replied with sincerity. "Now have fun, and I'll be up in a little while to see how you're doing in the games." Robert went downstairs, feeling lighter than he had in months. He found Maria in the kitchen, preparing ingredients for dinner, and immediately noticed her curious expression. "Maria, I need to tell you some very important news." Maria immediately stopped what she was doing and turned to Robert with that attentive and caring expression she always showed when she sensed something important was happening in the family. At 55, she had become much more than an employee over the 10 years working in that house. She was a confidant, an advisor, and the mother figure William needed since he lost his own mother. Her hand still held the knife she was using to chop vegetables, but all her attention was on Robert. She had that special ability to sense when something significant was about to be revealed, an intuition developed through years of intimate life with the family. "What kind of news, Mr. Robert?" "From your expression, it seems to be something very special." Robert took a deep breath, organizing his thoughts on how to explain everything that had happened that extraordinary afternoon, without sounding completely out of touch with reality. He knew Maria well enough to know that she was a woman of solid faith, but he also knew that even religious people can have difficulty accepting reports of miracles when they happen so close to home. "Maria, something happened today that changed our lives completely. William is healed." Maria let the knife fall onto the cutting board with a metallic clatter that echoed through the silent kitchen, her eyes widening in absolute surprise and disbelief. During all those painful months, she had closely followed every moment of the family's suffering, preparing special meals that William often couldn't even finish, taking care of him with maternal affection when Robert had to work, discreetly wiping away the tears that streamed down her face when she thought no one was looking. She had prayed every night for the boy's recovery, had lit candles in church, had asked for the intercession of all the saints she knew. What do you mean? Healed, Mr. Robert? Did the doctors find a new treatment? Some experimental drug that finally worked? It wasn't quite like that, Maria. It was something much more extraordinary than any medical treatment that currently exists. Robert approached her, knowing that the explanation to come would test anyone's ability to believe in the impossible, even someone with the deep faith that Maria had always shown. Today at the park, we met a very special boy named Michael. He's an 8-year-old boy who has been living alone on the streets for 2 years, but who has an unshakable faith and an impressive wisdom that doesn't match his age. Maria frowned, trying to process and understand where Robert was going with this seemingly disconnected story from William's miraculous cure. And what does this street boy have to do with the cure of our William? He held William's hand. The three of us said a prayer together, right there in the middle of the park. And something absolutely miraculous happened before my very eyes. William simply got completely better, instantly. He was walking without any pain, breathing normally, effortlessly, full of energy and vitality. It's as if the disease had completely disappeared from his body, as if it had never existed. Robert spoke slowly, carefully observing every nuance of Maria's reaction, prepared for any kind of response she might have. Maria leaned against the kitchen counter with both hands, needing physical support to process what she was hearing. Her rational mind fought against the possibility of what Robert was describing, but her heart of faith was already beginning to accept that maybe, just maybe, her prayers had been answered in a completely unexpected way. Mr. Robert, are you absolutely sure about this? Sometimes, when we want something to happen very badly, when we are desperate for a change, we can delude ourselves or misinterpret the signs. Maria, I know exactly how this sounds. I myself had a very hard time believing what I was seeing with my own eyes. But I saw it, Maria. I saw it with absolute clarity. William walked distances he hadn't been able to walk for months. He ran like he hadn't run in almost a year, played and laughed without any sign of fatigue or pain. And there's one more very important thing I need to tell you. Robert paused deliberately, preparing for the second part of the revelation, which he knew would be equally impactful. I brought Michael to live with us, permanently. He's going to be like a second son to me, and a real brother to William. Maria had to sit down immediately in one of the kitchen chairs. So great was the surprise caused by this second revelation, which seemed even more surreal than the first. A street boy, Mr. Robert? Are you sure this is a good idea? Not that I have any kind of prejudice against children in vulnerable situations, but these are completely different life realities. These are worlds that have never crossed before. Maria, I perfectly understand your concern, and I know it seems like too impulsive a decision to be sensible. But this boy is special, in a way that is very difficult to explain with simple words. He has a purity of heart, a spiritual wisdom, and a genuine goodness that deeply touched not only me, but especially William. Besides, it was through his faith and his intervention that my son was healed. How could I not welcome him into our family after such an extraordinary gift? Maria was silent for a few long moments, carefully processing all that extraordinary information that challenged her understanding of reality. As a woman of deep faith, who had attended church religiously for decades, she sincerely believed in miracles and divine interventions. But as a practical and experienced person, she also knew very well that drastic changes in the family structure always brought complex and unpredictable challenges. Where is this boy right now? Upstairs, in William's room. They're playing video games and getting to know each other as brothers. Maria, I need you to understand something. I have never in my entire life seen William so genuinely excited and happy as I saw him today. It's as if he has regained not only his physical health, but also all the joy for life that had disappeared during these terrible months of suffering. Maria stood up from the chair slowly and walked to the kitchen window, which offered a partial view of the second floor. As if she could see through the walls, the two boys playing together and building the first moments of a friendship that promised to become a true fraternal bond. And how exactly is William reacting to having a brother so suddenly? He is absolutely radiant, Maria. The two of them connected in an impressive and natural way that seemed impossible, considering they met just a few hours ago. It's as if they've been blood brothers for years. William is teaching Michael everything, with infinite patience and a spontaneous generosity that makes me deeply proud as a father. He's behaving like a responsible and caring older brother. A slow, warm smile began to form on Maria's wrinkled face, illuminating her features in a way Robert hadn't seen in a long time. During all those years dedicated to caring for William with maternal love, she had clearly noticed how much the boy missed the company of his age. especially after the progressive disease gradually pushed him away from all his school friends and normal social activities for a child. So, our William finally has a real brother. I always thought this big house was missing another child to keep him company and fill all these spaces with joy and youthful energy. Exactly, Maria. And I really need your help to make Michael feel genuinely welcome and an integral part of our family. He is understandably nervous about adapting to a life so radically different from the one he has always known and lived. Maria nodded with renewed determination, her maternal and caregiving instincts already fully awakening to embrace another child under her protective wings. Of course, I will help with all my heart and experience. The poor child, he must be scared and confused with so much radical change all at once. I will prepare a special dinner to properly welcome our new family member. Thank you so much, Maria. I knew I could count on you completely, as I always have throughout all these years, Robert said, feeling tremendously relieved to have the unconditional support of the person who knew the specific needs and routines of that house better than anyone. What do you think about making that delicious lasagna that William loves so much? And maybe a special chocolate cake for a celebratory dessert? Maria's eyes sparkled with culinary enthusiasm, as they always did when she had the opportunity to show her affection through carefully prepared food. Great idea. And I'll also prepare some of that chicken pot pie that's lighter and milder, in case the boy isn't used to very elaborate or seasoned foods. A child who has lived on the street sometimes has a sensitive stomach and needs gradual adaptation. Robert was deeply touched by Maria's careful and motherly consideration. You always think of all the important details. That's exactly why this family simply wouldn't function properly without you here, taking care of all of us. Oh, Mr. Robert, you always exaggerate with the compliments, Maria replied with genuine modesty. But it was clearly visible the pleasure and pride she felt at being recognized and valued as an essential member of the family. Now, tell me more details about this, Michael. What does he look like physically? What kind of things does he like? What is his personality? He is an absolutely extraordinary boy, Maria. He's 8 years old, extremely polite and respectful, shows an impressive natural intelligence, and has an emotional and spiritual maturity that doesn't match his chronological age. But at the same time, when he's interacting with William, he shows all the pure innocence and natural curiosity of a normal, healthy child. Robert thought carefully for a moment before continuing to describe Michael. He's never played a video game in his life, never eaten pizza, never had his own room or a real bed. The simplest and most basic things for us are absolutely incredible novelties for him. It's touching and, at the same time, revealing to see how he values every little comfort we offer. The poor child. And his parents? What happened to the family? His mother died when he was only 6 years old. He never knew his father, doesn't even know who he is. He's been completely alone in the world for 2 whole years, surviving exclusively on his own courage and the occasional kindness of strangers. Maria shook her head with deep sadness and simultaneous admiration. What an incredibly brave and resilient child. To survive alone on the streets for so long, especially being so young, he must have gone through terrible situations that no child should ever have to face. Yes, he certainly went through traumatic experiences, but somehow, miraculously, he managed to keep his unshakable faith and genuine goodness completely intact. That's exactly what is most impressive and admirable about him. He could easily have become resentful, bitter, or violent, but he consciously chose to keep hope alive and use his energy to help other people, as he did today with our William. From upstairs, the unmistakable sounds of clear laughter and lively conversation between the two boys reached the kitchen, interspersed with exclamations of surprise and celebration that indicated the video game was providing moments of pure fun and discovery. Maria smiled broadly upon hearing those sounds of genuine joy that had not echoed through the walls of that house for so long. It's been so long since I've heard our William laugh in that spontaneous and carefree way. Ever since his mother passed away and he became progressively sicker, this whole house has been shrouded in a very silent and melancholic atmosphere. Well, Maria, it seems that Michael has brought new life, positive energy, and contagious joy to our entire family. And to think he just arrived here a few hours ago. Imagine what can happen when he is completely adapted and comfortable with us. Robert also smiled broadly upon hearing the laughter coming from the room, feeling his heart warm in a way he hadn't experienced in months. Mr. Robert, can I ask some important practical questions? Maria hesitated a little before continuing, wanting to address delicate subjects without seeming discouraging. Of course, Maria. You can speak with complete freedom about anything that is worrying you. Have you carefully considered all the practical and legal implications of adopting a street child? Official documents, school enrollment, complex legal issues, a complete medical checkup, the possible need for psychological support. Robert nodded seriously, showing that he had meticulously considered all these essential practical matters. I have thought in detail about absolutely all of these responsibilities. Tomorrow morning, first thing, I will call my best lawyers to immediately begin the formal adoption process. I will enroll Michael in the same private school as William so they can study together. I will take him to the best doctors in the city for a complete and detailed medical checkup. I know perfectly well that it will be a lot of work and will require patience, but I am completely prepared and willing to face all the challenges. And if there are significant adaptation difficulties, if Michael has recurring nightmares, deep psychological traumas, problematic behaviors that need specialized treatment, then we will face absolutely all of it together, united as a true family. Maria, I learned a very important lesson today. Sometimes the best and most correct decisions in life are exactly those we make with an open heart, not just with a calculating mind. Maria smiled with approval, recognizing Robert's sincere and unwavering determination throughout all the years working for that family. She had learned to recognize when Robert was making decisions on impulse versus when he was acting out of deep conviction. You have always been a man of generous heart and good intentions. That is exactly why this family deserves all the wonderful blessings it is receiving today. At that precise moment, an enthusiastic shout of celebration was heard, coming directly from upstairs, immediately followed by rhythmic clapping and contagious laughter that echoed throughout the house. Maria and Robert looked simultaneously at the ceiling, amusingly imagining that one of the boys had just won a particularly exciting match or had managed to pass a level in some challenging game. It seems they are having immense fun up there, Maria commented with maternal affection, already feeling genuine affection for a child she had not even met personally yet. I'll go up in a little while to properly meet our new family member and give him an official welcome. I am absolutely sure you will love Michael, Maria, and he will love you too, without a doubt. He has a natural and spontaneous respect for his elders, which is truly admirable in a child his age. Robert automatically checked the watch on his wrist and realized with surprise that time had passed much more quickly than he had imagined during that entire revealing conversation. Maria, approximately, how long will it take you to prepare this special dinner? 2 hours at the most, working with all care and dedication. I will prepare everything with much love and attention to detail. Perfect. In the meantime, I'll lock myself in the office to call some important contacts and start resolving all the urgent practical matters of Michael's documentation and legal situation. Robert headed determinedly towards the kitchen door, but stopped abruptly and turned to Maria with an expression of deep gratitude. Maria, thank you so much for accepting this radical change so positively and welcomingly. I know perfectly well that it is not easy to have our routine completely altered from one moment to the next, especially with such significant changes. Mr. Robert, in all these 10 years working dedicatedly in this house, I have learned a valuable lesson. The best surprises in life are invariably those that arrive when we least expect them, in ways we could never have planned or imagined. If this special boy has brought miraculous healing to William and renewed joy to this family, then he is unequivocally a divine blessing, not a problematic complication. Maria's wise and reassuring words completely calmed any residual anxiety that Robert might still be feeling. You always know exactly the right words to say at the right time. It is the accumulated experience of age and attentive observation of life, Mr. Robert. Now go resolve all your important phone calls, and I will immediately start preparing Michael's special welcome banquet. Robert left the kitchen with a genuine smile on his face and headed with determined steps to his private office. Maria was left alone for a few contemplative moments, calmly looking around the kitchen she knew intimately like the palm of her hand, vividly imagining what it would be like to have another energetic child running through the house, asking for snacks at all hours, making a creative mess, filling all the spaces with youthful energy and constant laughter. The prospect left her genuinely excited and renewed. She methodically began to separate all the necessary ingredients for the special lasagna, humming softly, a cheerful song she always sang when she was especially happy and optimistic about life. As she worked with her experienced hands, her thoughts constantly flew to the boy upstairs, who had arrived so completely unexpectedly and had already managed to change the entire emotional dynamic of the family in a matter of hours. From upstairs, more sounds of enthusiastic celebration periodically arrived, this time clearly followed by William's patient voice, explaining something in detail to Michael, probably teaching him the rules of a new game or strategies to overcome specific challenges. Maria smiled tenderly, vividly remembering how William had always been naturally patient and generous by nature. Always willing to patiently teach and generously share everything he had. He would undoubtedly be a wonderful and protective older brother to Michael. As she carefully sautéed the aromatic ingredients for the special lasagna sauce, Maria offered a silent and fervent prayer of deep gratitude. She had personally witnessed many genuinely difficult and painful moments in that family, had discreetly cried along with them in the darkest and most desperate hours. And now, she was being privileged to witness a moment of pure joy, complete renewal, and renewed hope. The delicious and comforting aroma that was gradually beginning to spread throughout the kitchen promised a truly special dinner, one that would officially and forever mark the arrival of the new family member. Maria worked with all the meticulous care and maternal affection of someone who knew instinctively that she was preparing much more than just a meal. She was preparing a meaningful celebration, a warm welcome ritual, a historic moment that would be remembered and valued forever by all involved. About 40 minutes later, when the tempting aroma had already spread throughout the house, William came running down the stairs energetically, with Michael following close behind, with more cautious steps, both talking simultaneously and enthusiastically about their conquered adventures in the video game. "Maria! Maria!" William shouted with contagious enthusiasm, his voice echoing throughout the house. "You have to meet my new brother, Michael. He's incredible." Michael stopped hesitantly at the kitchen entrance, suddenly shy and respectful before the elegant and motherly woman who turned completely to greet them with a warm and welcoming smile. Maria carefully wiped her hands on her clean apron and approached the boys with a genuine smile that radiated kindness and unconditional acceptance. "So you are the famous Michael, who healed our dear William and brought so much joy to this house." Michael shyly lowered his head at Maria's compliment, his cheeks blushing slightly as he nervously fidgeted with his hands. It was clear that he was not used to receiving recognition or being the center of attention in a positive way. During all those years living on the streets, interactions with adults usually involved requests for food or money, or attempts to hide from authorities. To have an elegant and motherly woman speaking of him as if he were special was a completely new and slightly overwhelming experience. "I didn't do anything special, ma'am," Michael replied with the genuine humility that characterized his personality. "I just prayed with William and Mr. Robert. It was God who performed the miracle." Maria was immediately charmed by Michael's natural modesty and his respectful way of speaking. She bent down to be at the boy's level, her eyes shining with the same maternal tenderness she always showed with William. "My dear, sometimes God uses special people like you to make his miracles happen. You were the instrument he chose to heal our William." William approached Michael and put his arm around his friend's shoulder in a protective and affectionate gesture. "Maria, you should have seen how Michael played video games. He had never played before in his life, but he learned super fast. He managed to pass 3 levels in the first game he tried." Michael smiled shyly, clearly pleased with the recognition of his newfound skills. "William is a very patient teacher. He explained everything to me very carefully, and when I couldn't do something, he showed me again, without getting impatient." Maria observed the natural and affectionate interaction between the two boys, and felt her heart warm completely. It was clear that a genuine and deep friendship was developing rapidly between them, based on mutual respect and genuine care for each other. "Michael, I hope you are feeling welcome in our home. This is now your home too, and I want you to know that you can count on me for anything you need." Michael looked directly into Maria's kind eyes, his expression revealing a deep gratitude that he was still learning to express properly. "Thank you so much, Maria. I've never had a real home before, so I'm still learning how it works. But everyone here has been very kind to me. And you, dear, do you have a favorite food? Anything special you like to eat?" Maria asked, already thinking about how she could adapt her recipes to please the new family member. Michael became thoughtful for a moment, as if the question were more complex than it seemed. "Actually, Maria, I've never had many food options. I ate what I could find or what people gave me. But I've always dreamed of trying real pizza, the kind that appears on the television in the store windows." Maria smiled tenderly upon realizing how Michael managed to maintain simple dreams, even in the most difficult circumstances. "So, tonight, after the special dinner I'm preparing, we're going to order pizza for you two. How about that?" Michael's eyes lit up with a pure joy that moved Maria's heart. "Really? Real pizza? Real pizza with melted cheese, just the way you've always dreamed." Maria confirmed, feeling an immense satisfaction in being able to provide this small joy to a child who had experienced so few. William clapped his hands excitedly. "Michael, You're going to love pizza. And then we can go back to the room and play more video games. I want to teach you that racing game, that's my favorite. At that moment, Robert appeared at the kitchen entrance, coming from the office where he had spent the last hour making important calls. His expression was one of satisfaction, mixed with determination, indicating that he had managed to resolve some urgent practical matters. How are things going here? From what I can hear, it seems you two are having a lot of fun, Dad. Michael is amazing at video games, and Maria is going to order pizza for us after dinner, William announced enthusiastically, running to hug his father. Michael stood a little further away, still adjusting to the family dynamic, but observing with admiration the affectionate relationship between father and son. Robert extended his hand to Michael, who shook it politely. Michael, I just spoke with my lawyers and with the principal of William's school. Tomorrow, we will sort out all the paperwork to make your adoption official. And on Monday, you will start studying at the same school as William. Michael felt a mixture of excitement and nervousness upon hearing about school. Mr. Robert, I'm a little worried about school. I can read and write, but I'm not sure if I'm at the same level as the other children my age. Michael, don't worry about that, Robert reassured him, placing a hand on the boy's shoulder. The principal is a very understanding person. She will assess your current level and, if necessary, you will have tutoring to catch up. The important thing is that you want to learn. Maria intervened in the conversation. And I can help with homework too. I always helped William when he needed it, and now I will help you both. Michael looked around, seeing all these people organizing to take care of him and include him completely in the family. It was a completely new and still a bit hard to believe feeling. You are the kindest people I have ever met. I promise I will study hard and make you proud of me. Michael, you already make us proud, William said sincerely. You healed my illness and brought joy back to our family. Now you just need to be yourself. Robert observed his son's emotional maturity and felt proud of how William was handling the whole situation. Maria, how much longer until dinner is ready? Another hour, Mr. Robert. I'm preparing everything with a lot of care. Perfect. Michael, how about we go do some quick shopping? You'll need new clothes, toiletries, and maybe some books to prepare for school. Michael again became nervous at the idea of leaving the house. After so many years on the streets, closed and safe places had become his preferred refuge. Mr. Robert, could we maybe leave the shopping for tomorrow? I'd like to stay here at home a little longer, getting to know everything better and getting used to it. Robert immediately noticed Michael's anxiety and understood that the boy needed time to gradually adapt to the new reality. Of course, Michael, there's no rush at all. Today is your first day at home. The shopping can wait. William had an idea. Michael, do you want to see my books and games? I can lend you my clothes while we don't buy new ones for you. I'd love to see your books, William. I've always liked stories, even when I couldn't read very well, Michael replied, becoming excited at the prospect of discovering more about his new brother's hobbies. The two boys ran upstairs to the room, leaving Robert and Maria alone in the kitchen. How do you think he's adapting? Maria asked, showing the genuine concern she already felt for the new family member. Better than I expected, considering the magnitude of the change, Robert replied thoughtfully. He is clearly nervous and still processing everything, but he is making an effort to fit in, and the connection with William is really special. He is a very polite and respectful child. You can tell he had a good upbringing from his mother, despite all the difficulties, Maria observed. And William is radiant. It's good for him to have company his own age. From upstairs came sounds of drawers being opened and animated conversations, indicating that William was proudly showing his possessions to Michael. I think they'll be busy for a while, Robert commented. I'll take the opportunity to make a few more calls. I still need to talk to a child psychologist to get guidance on how to help Michael with the transition. Good idea, Mr. Robert. Transitions like these can be more challenging than they appear on the surface. Robert returned to the office, leaving Maria alone with her thoughts and culinary preparations. She continued to work, but her mind was focused on the two boys upstairs. As a woman who had raised her own children, she recognized the signs of a true friendship forming. About half an hour later, Michael came down to the kitchen alone, wearing one of William's t-shirts, which was slightly big on him. He seemed more relaxed, but still maintained that natural caution of someone who had learned to be observant and careful. Maria, can I help you with anything? Michael asked politely. Maria was touched by the spontaneous offer of help. What a kind boy. You can help me chop these vegetables if you want, but only if you feel comfortable. Michael approached the sink and carefully washed his hands before taking the knife Maria offered him. His movements were careful, but steady, indicating that he had learned to fend for himself from a very young age. Michael, Can I ask you a personal question? Maria asked gently as they worked side by side. Of course, Maria. How did you manage to maintain your faith and kindness after everything you've been through? Many people in your circumstances would become bitter. Michael stopped chopping for a moment, thinking carefully about the answer. My mother always told me that anger and bitterness are like poison you drink, hoping other people will die. She said that the only way to be truly free is to forgive and to keep believing in the good. Your mother seems to have been a very wise woman. She was the wisest person I ever knew. Even when we were in need, she always found reasons to be grateful and to help other people who were in a worse situation than us. Maria felt her eyes well up as she heard the maturity and wisdom of that boy of only 8 years. And you were never afraid, living alone on the streets? Very afraid, Maria, especially in the first few weeks after my mother died. But I learned that fear paralyzes you if you let it take over. So I tried to turn fear into caution, into attention, into intelligence to protect myself. You are a very brave boy, Michael. I don't know if I'm brave. I think I just did what I had to do to survive and honor my mother's memory. At that moment, William came running into the kitchen. Michael, you have to see the books I set aside for you. There are stories of adventure, of superheroes, of talking animals. Michael smiled at William, then looked at Maria. Can I finish helping you later, Maria? Of course, dear. Go have fun with your brother. The food is almost ready anyway. The two boys went upstairs again, and Maria was left alone with her thoughts. She realized that Michael was not just a child who needed help. He was someone who had a lot to teach the whole family. A few minutes later, Robert returned to the kitchen with a satisfied expression. I managed to schedule an appointment with one of the best child psychologists in the city for next week. She will help us better understand how to support Michael in this transition. Great idea. He seems to be adapting well, but as you always say, it's better to be safe than sorry. Exactly. And Maria, I wanted to thank you again for the way you welcomed Michael. I know it's not easy to accept such big changes in the house routine. Mr. Robert, that boy has something special. In just a few minutes of conversation, he has already won my heart. It's impossible not to like him. It's true. There's something about him that touches people deeply, Robert agreed. I think our family became more complete today. From upstairs, laughter and animated conversations came again. Maria and Robert exchanged smiles, both pleased with the harmony that was establishing between the boys. Dinner is almost ready, Maria announced. I think it's time to call our two adventurers to the table. Robert went upstairs and found the two boys sitting on the floor of the room, surrounded by open books. Michael was flipping through a storybook with fascination, while William enthusiastically explained about each character. Boys, dinner is almost ready. How about you come down and wash your hands? We'll be right there, Dad, William replied. Michael, you're going to love Maria's food. She cooks better than any restaurant. Michael stood up, carefully arranging the books. Thank you for lending me your books, William. I've never had so many books at my disposal. Now they're our books, Michael. Everything that's mine is yours too, because we're brothers. William's simple but profound declaration touched not only Michael, but also Robert, who was watching from the bedroom door. It was clear that the two boys had formed a genuine bond that went far beyond simple friendship. The three of them went down together to the dining room, where Maria had taken great care in setting the table. There were fresh flowers in the center, the best china in the house, and a delicious aroma coming from the kitchen. Michael stopped at the dining room entrance, observing everything with respectful admiration. It's all very beautiful. This is our special dining room, William explained proudly. We only use it on very important occasions, and today is a very important occasion. That's right, Robert added, placing a hand on Michael's shoulder. It's the first dinner of our complete family. Maria appeared, carrying a steaming dish with the perfectly brown lasagna. I hope you like it. I made it with a lot of love, thinking of you. Everyone sat at the table. Michael clearly a little nervous with all the formality. William noticed his friend's discomfort and held his hand under the table, offering silent support. Michael, would you like to say a prayer of thanks? Robert asked, remembering the boy's deep faith. Michael was surprised, but honored by the invitation. I'd love to, Mr. Robert. Everyone held hands around the table, forming a circle of family unity. Michael closed his eyes and spoke with the simplicity and sincerity that characterized his prayers. Thank you, God, for giving me a family when I thought I would always be alone. Thank you for healing William, and for making Mr. Robert and Maria welcome me with so much affection. Help me to be a good son and a good brother. Amen. Amen. Everyone repeated in unison. And when they opened their eyes, there were tears of emotion in the eyes of all the adults present. Maria began to serve the lasagna, and the first taste made Michael's eyes widen with pleasure. "This is delicious, Maria. It's the best food I've ever eaten in my life." "I'm so glad you liked it, dear," Maria replied, radiant with satisfaction. During dinner, the conversation flowed naturally. Michael told some stories from the streets that weren't too heavy. William shared plans for activities they could do together. And Robert talked about the preparations for school. "Michael, tomorrow we'll do that shopping for clothes and school supplies," Robert said. "It will be fun to choose everything together." "Mr. Robert, can I ask for something?" Michael hesitated before continuing. "Could we also buy a gift for Maria, to thank her for welcoming me so well?" Maria was visibly moved by Michael's consideration. "What a sweet boy. You don't have to give me any gift, dear, but I want to, Maria. My mother always said that when someone is kind to us, we should return the kindness." Robert smiled approvingly. "That's an excellent idea, Michael. Tomorrow, we'll choose something special for Maria." When they finished the main course, Maria brought the chocolate cake she had prepared. Michael looked at the dessert as if it were a treasure. "Can I really eat it?" "Of course you can. I made it especially for you," Maria replied, cutting a generous slice. After dessert, as promised, Robert called a pizzeria and ordered pizza for the boys. While they waited for the delivery, they settled in the living room. "Michael, how are you feeling about all of this?" Robert asked, taking advantage of a quieter moment to check on the boy's emotional state. Michael thought carefully before answering. "Mr. Robert, I feel like I'm living a very good dream. Sometimes, I'm afraid to wake up and find out that none of this is real." "It is real, Michael," William said with conviction. "And it will continue to be real every day. We are a family now, a real family." "That's right," Robert confirmed. "And families always take care of each other." When the pizza arrived, Michael tasted the first piece with almost religious reverence. His face lit up with pure happiness. "It's even better than I imagined." They ate pizza while watching an adventure movie, Michael and William sharing the same couch, commenting on the exciting scenes. It was a perfect picture of normal, happy family life. At the end of the evening, when it was time to go to bed, Michael stood at the door of the room he now shared with William. "William, thank you so much for sharing your room with me." "Michael, stop thanking me for everything," William replied with affection. "You're my brother now. Brothers share everything." After the boys went to bed, Robert and Maria chatted in the kitchen while she finished cleaning the dinner dishes. "How do you think the first day went?" "Better than I could have ever dreamed," Robert replied sincerely. "Michael has adapted impressively, and William is happier than I've seen him in months. It's a blessing to see the children so united already on the first day. Maria, I have a feeling that our life changed forever today. And it changed for the much better." From upstairs came the low voices of the boys talking before sleep. It was impossible to understand the words, but the tone was one of friendship and complicity. "They already seem like real brothers," Maria observed. "It's as if they've always lived together." Robert nodded, feeling a deep peace in his heart. After months of constant worry about William's health, he could finally relax and look to the future with optimism. "Maria, I think today was the most important day of our lives." Maria nodded with deep emotion, discreetly wiping away a tear that insisted on escaping from her tired but happy eyes. During all those years dedicated to caring for that family, she had witnessed moments of great sadness and periods of almost lost hope, but she had never experienced a transformation as complete and miraculous as the one that had happened on that extraordinary day. "Mr. Robert, I completely agree. This was truly a day that changed everything for our family." The soft voices of the boys continued to come from upstairs, creating a comforting soundtrack of genuine friendship and fraternal complicity that was developing naturally between them. It was possible to perceive, even without being able to distinguish the exact words, that they were sharing secrets, dreams, and plans for the future, building the foundations of a relationship that promised to last a lifetime. Robert walked to the kitchen window and looked out at the garden, illuminated by the soft light of the full moon that shone in the starry sky. The same garden that for months had witnessed his silent anguish as he walked alone in the sleepless early mornings, worried about William's uncertain future, now seemed different, more welcoming, more full of positive possibilities. "You know, Maria, this morning when I woke up, I was preparing for another day of doctor's appointments, tests, and constant worries. I could never have imagined that I would end the day with 2 healthy sons and a complete family." Maria finished drying the last dish and placed it carefully in the cupboard, her movements automatic and precise, the result of years of practice. But her thoughts were completely focused on the extraordinary transformation she had witnessed. "Do you know what impresses me most about all this? It's how Michael managed to adapt so quickly to our routine. Many children in a normal situation would already have difficulty with so many changes at once, but he showed an impressive maturity and adaptability. It's true. He has a natural wisdom that constantly surprises me. At the same time that he is clearly a child who needs care and protection, he is also someone who has a lot to teach us about faith, gratitude, and resilience. Robert reflected aloud, still processing all the complex aspects of Michael's personality that he had discovered throughout that intense day. From upstairs came a muffled laugh from William, immediately followed by an amused response from Michael. It was clear that the two were having fun even at bedtime, creating precious memories that would forever mark the beginning of their life as brothers. Maria smiled upon hearing the sounds of joy. It's been so long since I've heard William laugh at bedtime. For the last few months, bedtime was always a moment of anxiety, with him worried about how he would feel the next day. Now he has company. He has someone his age to share worries and joys with. That makes all the difference in the world, Robert agreed, vividly remembering the nights when he had needed to comfort William, when the fear of the disease prevented him from falling asleep peacefully. Gradually, the boys' voices faded, until a peaceful silence filled the house. It was a different silence from the heavy, worried silence that had characterized the house during the months of illness. This was a silence filled with peace, contentment, and renewed hope. "I think they've finally fallen asleep," Maria observed with motherly tenderness. "May God bless their sleep, and may they have beautiful and restful dreams. Amen," Robert replied sincerely, surprising himself with his own religious spontaneity. Until that day, he had rarely expressed his faith so openly. But the extraordinary events he had witnessed had awakened in him a spiritual awareness that had been dormant for years. Maria finished organizing the kitchen and headed towards the door that led to her quarters on the ground floor of the house. "Mr. Robert, I'm going to retire for the night. It's been a long and emotional day for all of us." "Of course, Maria. Rest well. Tomorrow will be another important day with all the arrangements we need to make for Michael. Good night, Mr. Robert. And once again, congratulations on the courageous and generous decision to welcome Michael into our family. I am sure it was the best decision you have ever made in your entire life." After Maria left, Robert remained alone in the kitchen for a few minutes, savoring the tranquility of the moment and reflecting on the magnitude of the changes that had occurred in just a few hours. He thought of the wheelchair they had left in the park, an abandoned symbol of limitations that no longer existed. He thought of the expression of pure joy on William's face when Michael held his hand for the first time. He thought of Michael's genuine humility in the face of every small kindness he received. He thought of the simple, yet profound wisdom the boy had shown when speaking of faith and hope. He went silently up the stairs, his steps careful not to wake the boys sleeping in the room next door. He stopped briefly before the ajar door and peeked discreetly inside. Michael and William were sleeping soundly, Michael in his new bed and William in his own. But it was possible to see that they had fallen asleep in the middle of a conversation, both turned towards each other, as if maintaining a connection even during sleep. The sight deeply touched Robert's fatherly heart. There were his two sons, one by birth and the other by a choice of the heart, resting safely and protected under the same roof, breathing the same peaceful air of the house that had now truly become a complete home. Robert went to his own room, but before getting into bed, he knelt beside the bed and offered a silent prayer of gratitude, more intense and sincere than any prayer he had made in his entire adult life. He thanked for William's miraculous healing. He thanked for the providential meeting with Michael. He thanked for the opportunity to make a difference in the life of a child in need. And he thanked for the sense of family completeness that he had not experienced since his wife's death. The next morning, Robert woke up earlier than usual, not out of anxiety or worry, as was often the case in recent months, but out of a positive energy and enthusiasm to start the first official day of the new family configuration. He went down to the kitchen and found Maria already preparing breakfast, humming softly the same cheerful song from the day before. "Good morning, Maria. How did you sleep?" "Very well, Mr. Robert. And did you manage to rest despite all the emotion from yesterday?" "I slept like I haven't slept in months." "It's amazing how peace of mind affects the quality of sleep," Robert replied, pouring himself a cup of aromatic coffee. "And have our boys woken up yet?" "Not yet. I think they'll sleep a little longer after such an intense and new-filled day." Maria smiled, preparing a special tray with the boys' breakfast. "I prepared some special pancakes. I'm sure Michael has never tried homemade pancakes." As if they had heard the conversation, sounds of movement began to come from the second floor, followed by animated voices and footsteps running down the hallway. A few minutes later, William and Michael came down to the kitchen together. both still wearing borrowed pajamas, hair disheveled from sleep, but faces radiant with joy and anticipation for the new day. "Good morning, Dad. Good morning, Maria." William greeted energetically, followed immediately by Michael, who repeated the greeting with respectful politeness, but genuine enthusiasm. "Good morning, boys. How did you sleep?" Robert asked, watching both boys carefully to detect any sign of fatigue or discomfort. "It was the best night's sleep of my life," Michael answered with touching sincerity. "I've never slept in such a comfortable bed, and I've never felt so safe and protected." William nodded in agreement. "And we talked a lot before falling asleep. Michael told me incredible stories about the things he saw on the streets, and I told him about all the cool places we're going to visit together." Maria served the still warm pancakes, watching with maternal satisfaction as Michael tasted the first forkful with an expression of pure delight. "This is delicious, Maria. It's sweet and soft at the same time. I'm glad you liked it, dear. You can eat as many as you want." During breakfast, Robert explained the day's agenda. "First, we'll go to the county clerk's office to start the documentation process. Then we'll go shopping for clothes and school supplies. And in the afternoon, maybe we can visit the school for Michael to get to know the environment." Michael nodded, showing a mixture of nervousness and excitement. "Mr. Robert, I was thinking during the night. Could we stop by the park where we met? I'd like to see if the wheelchair is still there. And if it is, maybe we could leave a note explaining that it's available for anyone who needs it." Michael's thoughtful suggestion once again impressed everyone present. Even in the midst of his own life transformation, he continued to think about how he could help others. "That's an excellent idea, Michael," Robert approved warmly. "We'll include that in our itinerary." After breakfast, the preparations to leave began. Michael wore borrowed clothes from William, which were a little big on him, but he showed no discomfort. On the contrary, he seemed grateful to have clean and appropriate clothes to wear. During the car ride to the clerk's office, Michael watched everything carefully through the window, but his posture was completely different from the anxiety he had sometimes shown the day before. Now there was confidence and a sense of belonging in his posture. At the clerk's office, the initial documentation process went smoothly. The responsible official was understanding and efficient, explaining all the necessary steps to formalize the adoption. Michael remained quiet and respectful throughout the procedure, but it was clear that he was absorbing every detail with serious attention. "In about a month, all the documents will be ready," the official explained. "Then Michael will officially be your son, Mr. Robert." Upon hearing these words, Michael looked at Robert with an expression of deep gratitude that needed no verbal expression. Robert placed his hand on Michael's shoulder in a gesture of paternal affection and protection. The next stop was the clothing stores. Michael was initially impressed by the number of options available, but with William's patient guidance and Robert's careful suggestions, he gradually became more comfortable with the process of choosing clothes that he really liked. "Michael, choose what you like," Robert encouraged. "This is about you discovering your own style and feeling comfortable." At the end of the shopping expedition, Michael had a complete wardrobe of suitable clothes for school, casual clothes, and even some clothes for special occasions. His happiness was palpable, but he also insisted on choosing a small gift for Maria, eventually selecting a beautiful silk scarf that he thought she would appreciate. During lunch at a nearby restaurant, Michael tried several dishes he had never tasted before, each new flavor being a small adventure. William took great pleasure in explaining each dish and observing Michael's reactions of delight and discovery. The afternoon was spent visiting the school, where Michael would soon begin studying. The principal, a warm and understanding woman, gave them a comprehensive tour and explained how they would ensure Michael's smooth transition into academic life. "Don't worry, Michael," she reassured him gently. "We have experience working with children from various backgrounds. The important thing is that you want to learn, and that is clearly evident." Michael asked thoughtful questions about the curriculum, the daily schedule, and opportunities for extracurricular activities. His genuine interest in learning impressed everyone present. As promised, their final stop was the park where it had all begun. Just 24 hours earlier, the wheelchair was still where they had left it, like a silent witness to the miraculous events that had occurred. Michael approached the chair with reverence, touching it gently before placing a small note they had prepared, explaining that it was available for anyone who might need it. "Thank you," Michael whispered. Whether it was to the chair, to the park, or to the universe itself, it wasn't entirely clear, but the gratitude in his voice was unmistakable. William took Michael's hand, and together they walked to the exact spot where they had first connected the day before. It seemed smaller now, less significant in terms of physical space, but infinitely more significant in terms of emotional impact. "Look, Michael." William pointed to some birds that were singing in a nearby tree. "They are celebrating too." Michael smiled, his face reflecting a peace and contentment that had replaced the uncertainty and fear that had characterized his expression when they first met. The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the park, creating an atmosphere of serenity and completeness. As they prepared to leave the park for the last time as visitors, rather than residents of Hope, Michael turned for one last look. Tomorrow he would start school. In a few weeks he would be officially adopted. In a few months, this whole experience might feel like it had always been part of his life. But in this moment, he was completely present, completely grateful, and completely aware that his life had been forever changed by the power of faith, love, and human connection. The journey home was filled with comfortable conversation about plans for the next day, excitement about school, and shared anticipation for the family dinner Maria was preparing. When they arrived home, Maria greeted them with maternal warmth, eager to hear about all their adventures and discoveries throughout the day. "How did everything go?" she asked, helping them carry the shopping bags full of Michael's new possessions. "Better than we could have hoped," Robert replied, watching as Michael carefully hung his new clothes in the closet he now shared with William. That evening, as they sat around the dinner table for another family meal, Michael looked around at each person present: Robert, who had opened his heart and home; William, who had become not just a brother, but a true friend; and Maria, who had welcomed him with unconditional motherly love. The gratitude he felt was overwhelming, but it was accompanied by something equally powerful: a sense of belonging, of home, of family. The conversation flowed naturally during dinner, covering topics ranging from school preparations to weekend plans, from favorite foods to shared dreams for the future. Michael contributed enthusiastically to each discussion, his unique perspective valuable, his joy contagious. After dinner, as they had done the night before, they gathered in the living room. This time, instead of pizza and movies, they spent time reading together. Michael chose one of the books William had shown him, and they took turns reading aloud, creating a new family tradition that would likely continue for years to come. When it was time for bed, a routine began to establish itself. Michael and William brushed their teeth side by side, changed into comfortable pajamas, and settled into their respective beds. But unlike the previous night, tonight there was no nervousness, no uncertainty about what tomorrow might bring. There was only a comfortable familiarity, a feeling that this was exactly where Michael belonged. Robert stopped by to say goodnight, as he had done with William for years. But now he had two sons to bless and protect. "Good night, boys. Sleep well." "Good night, Dad," they both replied in unison, the word "dad" coming naturally from Michael's lips, as if it had always been part of his vocabulary. Maria also stopped by to check if everything was okay, adjusting blankets and offering goodnight hugs. "Until tomorrow, my dears." "Until tomorrow, Maria," Michael replied, his voice full of genuine affection for the woman who had become a mother figure in his life. After all the adults had left the room, Michael and William talked quietly in the darkness, as brothers do, sharing thoughts about the day, expectations for school, and gratitude for the family they had found in each other. Gradually, their voices faded until sleep overtook them. Two boys who had found in each other not just friends, but true brothers. Downstairs, Robert and Maria finished the day's chores, both reflecting on the extraordinary transformation that had taken place in their lives. The house, which for months had been silent and worried, now resonated with laughter, lively conversations, and the comforting sounds of a complete family. Months later, when Michael was fully adapted to school, when the adoption papers were finalized, when the family routine was completely established, Robert would look back on that day in the park as the moment his life truly began again. William would grow up strong and healthy, never again showing signs of the disease that had almost taken him. Michael would flourish in his new environment, in his studies, and in his ability to help others facing difficulties. The wheelchair in the park would eventually be found by a family who really needed it, along with the explanatory note Michael had left, creating a chain of kindness that would spread far beyond that first act of generosity. Maria would continue to care for the expanded family with the same love and dedication, now with double the joy and purpose. And on quiet nights, when the house was still and everyone slept peacefully, Robert would sometimes walk to the kitchen window, look out at the moonlit garden, and offer a silent prayer of gratitude for the miracle that had transformed his family of 3 people in mourning to 4 people in peace, love, and infinite hope. If you've made it this far, leave a comment telling us what you thought. Your opinion is very important to us. Share this video with your friends and family. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel and activate the bell so you don't miss any of our new content. Every like, comment, and share helps us continue creating amazing content for you.